Hello, hello. Welcome to the final installment of our mini series, How Do You Know It's Time to ... And today we're talking with Bree Mcqueen. She's the owner of Bree Mcqueen Bridal, and she is telling us how to know when it's time to hire out for professional help. And I know a lot of us need help, but in this particular episode, we're talking about professional help in our businesses. So maybe you're at that point in your business where you're like, I'm so busy, but I know that like my biggest moneymaker is the actual sewing or like my physical interaction with brides. And I need to delegate tasks to others to help me with like the emailing or the social media marketing or my branding or sending invoices. I mean, there are all these daily tasks that you may be thinking about hiring out to get help with. So that's what this episode's all about. And Bree gives us some really great insight on how she budgeted for this, how it became like a gradual process, and I think most importantly, how she found the right fit for her business and for her brand. So I hope you get as much out of this conversation as I did. But before we dive in, I wanted to remind you to register for our free masterclass that's coming up on March 9th and 10th. We're talking all about introducing bridal packages to your current portfolio. So this is not an all-day masterclass. We'll be meeting for about an hour each day. And if you register, if you've been in a masterclass with me before, you know that I send you a little video with homework so you can prep the week before. And then we'll meet to talk about developing a package system that fits your business. So this is not all-inclusive alterations. I know some of you do offer that, but this is like a fittings package that is added on top of your alterations cost. And the point of the packages is to cover the cost of your fittings, of your preparation, of the business time, in addition to the actual sewing time. And what this does is it helps your clients truly understand what they are getting when they work with you, and what they can expect from you. Just straight from the jump. So this has been such a blessing in my business, and I can't wait to talk about it. I love this topic. So you can head to the link that is in the show notes, and that will take you to the registration, and I will see you hopefully March 9th. All right, let's dive into the episode. All right, we are here today with Bree Mcqueen, and you may know her by her beautiful Instagram feed and I always refer to her clear branding as an example of great branding and marketing. So Bree, I'm just so honored that you're here. Thank you for giving us your time and
Thank you so much
educating us.
for having me.
Yeah. So how about you tell us a little bit about Bree Mcqueen Bridal and how that all started, and kind of start from the beginning.
Okay, so like many of us, like my mom and my Nana were excellent sewers. My Nana made my mom's wedding dress. Like she was a really good seamstress. My sister and I had a lot of those like tacky matching dresses with like the sash that matches the one ribbon on the other kind of thing. So when we were growing up, like we had all of this stuff. So every special occasion dress was made by mom and Nana.
Wow.
So I do kind of
above like, oh yeah, my grandma sewed a little bit. It's like the fact that you got holiday outfits.
Oh yes, and the pictures to prove it. So I say that it comes like built in a little bit, but I would say I'm the first in my family to like make a career out of sewing. Mm-hmm. So it kind of came to that point where it was like, okay, you got to pick a career, and like I really have like an artistic side, but I didn't want to be like a fashion designer. That wasn't my calling. I'm not as great at the drawing part of fashion, and but I was really good at the construction. Mm-hmm. So when it came time to pick like a post-secondary, I did go to college for fashion construction. Oh, wow. I had to move to the city. I moved to Toronto for 3 years to do that program. There's only 2 schools in Ontario that offer that program. So it was like move to the city or pick something else. So I did a 3-year program there. And actually when I finished that up, I did another program specifically for body modification garments. So like bustiers, corsetry, that kind of stuff. And when I was looking for my internship following that program, we had to do an internship to graduate. So I couldn't find like a lingerie designer to be paired with, and that was fine. So they placed me with bridal. I worked for a couture bridal designer in Vaughan, which is near Toronto. And I was like, okay, whatever. But now that I've had that experience, there are so many similarities in construction between lingerie and corsetry. And so it's either like you go into bridal or you're into like theater, costume, historical stuff.
And when you said that, like, I'm like, those are the things that take the most like brain work for me, are those construction type projects, or like the building in the support. And so the fact that that's like literally your specialty is like very impressive.
So yeah, I guess you could say I sort of fell into bridal by accident. But once I got started with that internship, like I never looked back. I never pursued the lingerie stuff any further. I never went into general tailoring. I went straight from that internship to working in a bridal salon. And I've been a bridal seamstress ever since.
Wow. So did you start as like a partner with a bridal salon that like sold dresses? Were you their in-house seamstress?
Yes. So at the time that was like, so now the norm in my area is that bridal shops don't have in-house seamstresses anymore. That I'm going to say probably in the last like 5 to 8 years has basically disappeared. But at the time, so this is like 15 years ago, it was the norm for the most part to have an in-house seamstress at a bridal salon. So I started working there. I think I worked on a team of, I'm going to say 4 seamstresses at that shop. And like there were the standard, the best, the alterations lifers that had been in there. And that's where I learned a lot of that stuff. Specifically because altering is so different than constructing from scratch.
Totally.
And when I was working in my internship, that's construction from scratch. Like that's a different thing. But altering is, you learn the tricks and you just kind of have to keep doing it. So when I started, it was like shorten crinolines and sew on buttons and remove beads. Like it was like the crummy parts of alterations. But like you work through it and you get trusted a little more and a little more and a little more. And then after, a few years of doing that, so I'm like in my early 20s at this point, you start kind of taking on a little more work on the side, and maybe you start working on weekends. And then maybe you go down to part-time at the shop because you're part-time at home. And then you just kind of slowly make that way into full-time self-employment. And that leap is a scary one, but we do it and that's it. So
there are 2 women that I'm working with now who are in that boat where they're like, I'm an in-house seamstress. I want to become independent. And then there's kind of that, like, you want to do it ethically. You don't want to be like, so there has to be that like bravery in the open communication. And then you just take the leap, so, wow, I had no idea that you were a bridal salon partner. And it's funny that you mentioned how it's kind of disappeared in your area, because I feel like that's how it is around here. There are 2 shops that I can think of that have in-house seamstresses. And it's like, oh, it's almost like a little bit archaic. You know what I mean?
Yeah. When I was working at the salon, it was like an hourly wage. Like you went there, you did your 9 to 5, you got done whatever you could get done. And, if you weren't quick enough, they'd tell you to pick up the pace. And
oh, wow. I haven't heard of that. A 9 to 5, like an hourly wage for that. Wow.
Yeah. And there was like, I think 1 evening a week where we would do like fittings later into the evening, but you started later in the day that day. So that was like, I was employed by the shop the same way the bridal consultants would be. And then in the winter, so like during that slow season when they didn't have enough to keep 4 seamstresses on, we would go out onto the floor and we'd be bridal consultants, like salespeople.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it's like, now it's good to have that experience of having been on the other side of the sales part.
Totally.
But yeah, I think in my area, I can think of maybe 1 shop that still has an in-house seamstress. And I actually think she like owns the store, like the bridal salon. Everybody else, it's like you buy your dress, like here's a sheet of paper. These are the seamstresses we recommend, how far do you want to drive kind of thing. Yeah. And like, have a nice day.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. Like, I think, anyway, I could go more into that, but that's a different episode. That's a different topic.
I don't feel like I've been doing it for long enough to say like, well, back when I started my career, but like the truth is it's changed that much over that length of time.
Right. I think so too. The culture is changing so much and the expectations. Yeah. Okay, so when you did branch off, because it appears that you do attract like luxury brides and like there's a very specific client that you want to work with. So when you first branched off on your own, was that the case, or how long did it take for you to find like your ideal client?
It took me a really long time to find my ideal client. And I think it took me a long time to admit that I had an ideal client. Like, because when you start out, like, I think one of the first wedding dresses I did, it was like it was a girl I worked with at the salon. She was a consultant and she was getting married and she had like these ideas about adding teal and violet to her gown. And so it was like, this is a project I can take on the side. So you just start doing like whatever is offered to you. And then I think I did like my aunt's sister's second wedding dress for, a wedding in the Bahamas. It was like a casual knee length dress. And you just kind of like, you build up your skill and you build up your confidence because like, and I'm like, we'll touch on like the billing and stuff, I'm sure, as we get into this, but like also didn't feel like I could charge luxury rates. Like I'm like a Kijiji seamstress at this point. So Kijiji's like online, like Craigslist. I think you guys. So it's like you're just getting like
Canadian lingo. Is that what we're learning today? Or
I actually didn't until it came out of my mouth. I didn't think about the fact that was only here. I know you guys have Craigslist.
Okay.
Anyway, so it's like I'm putting myself out there and just saying like, okay, general alterations, bridal alterations, pillow shams. Like I would take on whatever when I first started. And
the garbage bags of, random clothes from people's closets. Yes. I had those from my coworkers when I was working as a teacher. They would just bring me stuff in the staff room. And I was like, okay, I wasn't going to say no.
Yeah. So I started taking on like all kinds of stuff. And then I kind of narrowed myself down to like, okay, like let's just stick with the formal wear. And, we'll kind of go from there. And then it started to become more, then it was predominantly bridesmaids dresses and like grad dresses and prom dresses that I was doing when I first sort of narrowed myself down to that. And now it's just wedding dresses. Like, I mean, I do see some other formal wear clients, but I will only work on the formal wear dresses at this point. But I would say about 95% of my clients are the wedding dress and like the rest are like the prom, the bridesmaids, the mums, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So was there like a conscientious effort to attract more like high-end brides, or how did that transition work? Because I know that's going to play into developing your branding. So do you feel like you put like a conscientious effort in your branding first, or were you just learning how to attract the clients kind of organically and then built your brand around that?
So probably more of the second one. So when I was, starting to build my brand and becoming more confident, I was lucky enough that I was at the age where everyone I know was getting married. So this is happening. So we're talking like mid-20s. We're going to 7 or 8 weddings a season kind of thing. Like that was what we did.
Yeah.
And once you get one of the brides, it is likely that you'll also get some bridesmaids. And it is likely that, a year from now, those bridesmaids are also going to be married.
Yeah,
and
totally.
You get their bridesmaids and then somebody's sister. So like, that's kind of how I got that ball rolling just to specifically do bridal. Was it happened to be that my friends were of the age where we were getting married. And so it was easy to attract those clients because I knew most of them, or I knew them through somebody else, or somebody else that they knew used me. And it was at that point, I'm going to say like maybe a couple of years into that was when I started like, okay, I'm just going to do bridal. Again, I guess I kind of fell into it. It seems weird to say that.
Yeah.
But
I think like you, like looking at like as an outsider, looking at your brand, I feel like you're not just going to kind of take any bride who's looking for like, oh, the lowest ticket, or, hey, I'm shopping around. So how did you develop that confidence in accepting just who you wanted or the tickets that, you thought would be worth it?
So I would say that has really only happened to me in the last maybe 5 or 6 years, maybe a little bit before that. But understanding that my education has to be worth something was a really big one. And I think part of that came through when we put my husband through schooling again and again. He's like one of those people that just loves to get more education. So when we were putting him through his master's, it was like, okay, education is worth something in a standard career type. So not self-employed, not entrepreneurial, but in his office, those letters equal higher pay. I have an education, therefore I should command higher pay. And a lot of seamstresses are self-taught. So it doesn't necessarily have to be education on paper, but years of service or the knowledge you've accumulated. And you can do it quickly, you can do it slowly, but like learning that the years I've put into this and my skills are worth something was a huge step towards knowing my worth, knowing my value, and understanding where I kind of fall on that hierarchy of wedding types around here. And now I've found that I kind of fit into this group of wedding vendors where a lot of my clients bought their dress from, one of 5 stores. They're probably hiring a photographer, like one of 5, I can name them. Like you just get into this like demographic of bride where this is kind of what I can command. And so this is what I'm going to charge. There were years and years that went by where I was getting the dresses that were, ordered online, the secondhand, the pop-up sales, those kinds of dresses. And I'm busy enough now that I can say no to people that I don't feel like are a good fit.
Yeah, I think you articulated that so well, because that's hard to put into words, but it's true. Like, I think pricing always seems to be this topic that continually comes up, what people charge based on where you live in the country or what you've been taught, what you should be charging for things, what you've been taught in the past. But that education, because I was just talking to somebody about this, of how like, okay, to raise straps, right? It doesn't take you hours to raise the straps, but you're not going to charge based on your time. You're going to charge based on your experience and how to raise these straps without making it look like you even touched them. And that's like the value of your time. I don't want to use the word justify your pricing, but sometimes we feel like we are trying to justify it because there's no standard out there at this point.
Exactly.
National standard. Yeah. As you're like building the brand and you're seeing the right clients coming in and all that fun stuff, when did it become a point where like you needed to get help for like the non-sewing jobs, like the branding or the photography or the marketing? Like, when did you decide to hire out for that?
So that stuff started about 3 years ago. I was so busy. I don't want to say I'm the only one in my area that does this, but where I live, I'm like right between 2 major cities, and people are willing to travel, 45 minutes or an hour to come and see me from either side. And so then it kind of became like, okay, well, if I'm, people are willing to travel to me, I'm fully booked. Like I can't possibly take on any more work and still sleep and feed myself. Yes. So I need help. And so I started looking for sewing help. And so many of us go through this. It's really, really hard to find good sewing help. Anyone that knows they're any good is working for themselves. And, anybody that says they're any good and they're not working for themselves, we test them out and maybe it's not the right choice. But wedding dresses are such a one-shot dealie. I feel I'm a super duper control freak. I make lists for everything. I'm the most A-type person I know. Like I couldn't relinquish control over the sewing. So I'm like, okay, I only have 2 hands. I can use them to sew, or I can use them to email people. I can use them to answer the Facebook messages. And that stuff takes so long. And you're texting the same thing to people over and over and over again. So the first thing I did when I realized, like I kind of figured this out, I was like, I've got 2 hands. I need them to sew. What can I hire out that can free up my hands to do sewing? And so the first thing I did was I got one of these automated CRM, like a customer relationship manager. There are tons and tons of different systems like this online, but this has been an absolute game changer for me. Automating the inquiry forms, the incoming information, automating when I send out my contracts, all my signatures are online, all my payments are online. My clients can schedule their own appointments. They can reschedule their own appointments. This freed up an enormous amount of my time.
Mm-hmm.
So once I got that, the learning curve on those things is steep. Like, I'm not a computer techie person. I'm a skilled trades person. I do not
feel that. Yeah.
So the learning curve with that was like, it was a steep one. But once I got that in my belt, I was like, okay, this has freed up a lot of my time. This is wonderful. What else can I hire out? So I'm just about to have my 3rd anniversary of like opening up this CRM program that I use. So that's been 3 years of that. And then about a year and a half ago, the babysitting of this system got to be like, okay, I'm done with the computer work. If I can be completely hands off of my client communication, like via email and the scheduling and the stuff. And also this is during COVID. People have changed their wedding dates like a million times. And I was over the paperwork, the administrative digital stuff. So I was like, okay, how can I get help with this? And I'm in a lot of, online forums for women in business and entrepreneurial people and this and that. And I kept seeing the term VA, virtual assistant, come up. And I was like, okay, what can these VA people do? Like, let's look into this a little bit more. So I started out then on my journey of hiring a virtual assistant, which is a tough one. And like hiring anybody, virtual or in person, like you need to interview people and you need to make sure that you're on the same page and that, you're going to vibe because you're going to talk to these people a lot. Like,
right.
They really need to become good friends with you in order to be able to effectively communicate with your clients as like, not as if they were you, because she's not impersonating me.
Right.
She's using like my voice the way I would. So I started interviewing VAs. And then that was like level 2 of being more hands off of the computer stuff. And then, then things kind of start to keep going. And again, there's a learning curve with that, working with a VA. So that was when I sort of figured out that we need to hire somebody to manage the social media, because that's not part of my VA's job, is managing social media. There are lots of people that will do both of those things. And once I had my VA and we're getting our feet under us for the client communication and the things that are coming in, but we're still getting inquiries from every direction. You get the Instagrams, you get the Facebooks, you get the text messages, the voicemails. I hate voicemail. I don't know if you hate voicemail.
Me too. And I'm like, who's still giving out my number? There's one shop who still has my number on something. And so I'll send like a text like, oh, this is my personal number, please. And then I block them after I send them, because it's like, I just don't want that access crossed. And then, I know that they can contact me through my website, through my email, and then personal stuff is deleted. So anyway, sorry to interrupt you. I just got really heated about that. But the voicemail.
About voicemail. So we're still getting all of these emails and the cold call emails where like they don't include enough stuff. And that was when I was like, okay, I need a proper website with, that I can put information on. People can fill in a contact form that I ask all the questions, and then I gather all of the information I can, and then kind of move forward with whether or not I'm going to take somebody on as a client.
Right.
And I need the answers to X, Y, and Z before I can commit to taking someone on as a client. Yeah. And so between my assistant and I, that was when it was like, okay, we need to streamline this. And that's when the website came up. So it was a little bit of a COVID project. And it was a little bit because I couldn't handle people rescheduling anymore. And I had the time to deal with it at that time too. So there was a lot of good for me that came out of having that downtime. But my website was again, like next level game changer. So we went like CRM into the VA, and then now the website is they
actually working for you instead of just like a place to find your contact information. And I think a lot of people feel like, okay, I have a website, it's like a homepage, but then what is the website doing for you? Is it communicating your systems, your basic pricing? I just recently put some basic pricing on my website. And that took me a long time because I'm like, I don't want numbers up there.
Yeah.
But that's also a filtering system too, right? Like people can see like what I'm about or what I'm charging. And if they want to move forward, they can fill out the form that has all the questions that I want. And so, but it does take time to put into the website to get it to work for you instead of just like, okay, it looks pretty. And now people know how to get a hold of me. It's like, I'm paying for this website. So how can it work for me?
Yeah. So
go ahead.
I hired a website designer and a branding specialist that worked together, and they made it so that my website can talk to my customer relation system, software, whatever. And so those things all work together now, which is awesome. It's amazing. I absolutely have no idea how to do it. And
that's okay.
That's okay. That's my job. Yeah. But yeah, I totally agree. Putting numbers out there, putting yourself out there, because you know that not everybody's going to be happy with what they see. Mm-hmm. It's like you have to kind of take everything that comes in with a grain of salt and, just do the best you can. And I think having at least some numbers on your website, having some, even if it's just a range, I think mine is a range where it says average alteration costs are this, this, or this. Mm-hmm. Then at least people show up knowing what to expect. And, it gives them an idea, but it does help narrow out the people that maybe don't have that in their budget. If they're like, oh, well, if average alterations cost this, and, that's double what I was hoping to spend, then, don't fill out the contact form. And that's totally okay.
Right.
There's somebody for everybody, and I'm sure they'll have, good luck finding a seamstress that can work within their budget.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember having that anxiety because this was literally just like a couple months ago, like, okay, here I go. And I've been thinking about it before then, probably like 6 to 8 months. Like I just need to put something out there, and I do the same thing. I'm going to go to your website now and see, like, compare our two, because I bet it's probably similar, but yeah, it's like, okay, here's your basic. If your dress is kind of like this, here's if you want more extensive, and here's, just so that there is, and there's a pretty wide range, but I feel like, and I remember when I like hit publish, I'm like, okay, nobody's going to fill out a form now. And I think the next day it was kind of quiet. So I was like, oh no, this is the end. But then it was fine. Like all these things that we tell ourselves, like, no, it's actually going to be fine. And I feel like, the appointments that I have had, people know what to expect, and they're more, it's not like a weird, I don't know, the more upfront you can be about your money and the pricing, you just can feel more confident from the jump. So, but I love it. I think that's so encouraging. I love how you said you just have two hands, because I've been considering hiring other seamstresses and I'm like, I just don't have peace about it yet. And so I'm not ready to like pull the trigger on that. But I have been thinking, okay, what other things can I delegate or hire out for, or people who can do this better than I can without like wasting brain space. Like if I know this isn't a skill of mine, letting go. So Rebecca, if she'll be listening, Rebecca is my VA. So she's going to be editing this for us. And even just, I'm hoping to have a different podcast episode just about the power of a VA. And I think sometimes as seamstresses, we think, okay, well, I don't really have like a digital business. Like I sew. So why would I want to hire somebody like a virtual assistant? But you just listed all of these tasks that do not include sewing. That's your moneymaker. So how can you hire out for these other like things that other people can do better than us? And we kind of hate to admit it, but we, there are skills that we haven't mastered, and that's okay.
Caitlin 100% writes client emails better than I do. Like, and she remembers stuff. Like yesterday I was we were talking with somebody that inquired. It's a person that I've worked for before. I did her wedding. Now she needs a bridesmaid's dress done, but it's not coming in until like 3 weeks before the wedding, this, that, and the other thing. And then she's like, oh, do you want me to mention like there's a rush fee? Because it's like, this is within 2 weeks of the wedding by the time her dress is supposed to come in. And I was like, yes, good call. I would have forgotten that. Yeah. But it's in her brain space to remember those things. Right. It's in mine to say, I know I'm full, but I also did, Jackie's wedding. So I'll still take her on. she's a better rememberer and better email writer than I am.
Seriously, know it, the power of releasing the tasks or releasing the control. And like you already kind of touched on this a little bit, but I think a fear is, okay, what if I don't find the right match? Or what if there's like dissonance? How did you have weird experiences before you landed on the perfect match, or how was that?
With my brand designer, my website designer, no, I definitely stalked her on social media for like a solid 6 months before I booked her.
Yeah.
But it felt like that was the best choice for me because I watched her online, and if this is her space, so it's like, you wouldn't take like fitness advice from somebody that wasn't like super fit. You don't want to take website advice from somebody who doesn't have like a top-notch website. Mm-hmm. So I think in that case, it's easy to kind of weed out people that maybe don't have your same vibe, and to find somebody that really struck a chord with me online, especially for that online stuff. It did take some time. I followed a lot of people. And it was just when I kept going back to the same thing where I was like, oh, I really like how she does this. Oh, I really like how she does this. It's okay to like other people and understand that their taste isn't the same as yours. Mm-hmm. So with that stuff, I guess I would say I did my research, but I didn't have any bad experiences because I didn't hire anybody else. With the VA thing, I interviewed like about a dozen people before I found the right match.
Wow.
That's
intense.
Picky, I guess. But like they were Zoom interviews.
I had like 4 and I thought that was like, wow.
And, I guess, so it maybe wasn't so much about finding somebody that vibed with me. It was about finding somebody that fit into the budget that I had and that was offering the skills that I needed and not a bunch of extra stuff that I didn't need, because I wasn't looking for a social media manager at that point. Right. I was just needing somebody to do the emails. And because a lot of people that work online in that area do a lot of different stuff. And so you can kind of stack up your packages and things. And I didn't need that. I don't want to go viral. I'm full. I just need somebody to babysit the clients that I have.
Right.
Send out the emails when I need them to go out, make sure the contracts get signed and that kind of stuff. So I'm more needed to interview more people in that area because I had a very narrow, area of work that I was looking for help with. And I had a fairly small budget for, when I started with her for what I wanted to see happen, because I was like dipping my toe in. I don't want to commit to, full tilt, take over everything because again, I'm a control freak. I still want to see the emails and
I think
stuff.
most of us are. If we've started a business, it's like there's something in there that
it's my baby. Like
has to feel controlling.
I will say as far as the social media management, so I have had people manage my social media accounts a couple of times over. I think I've had 3. None of them have lasted like the test of time yet. I just think I haven't found, the right person to do my social media posting with. I have like a love-hate relationship with my Instagram. I love posting stuff on Instagram, but every time I do, I get more inquiries. And because I'm already full, I have a real problem saying no to people. So there are spans where like I don't post stuff for like 4 months goes by and I haven't posted anything because as soon as I did, people would ask me to do work for them and I can't say no to them. And I learned to get better at that. I've learned that it's okay to say no. Because you can only take on so much. But I would say
it's hard because you want to look like, okay, you're current, you're alive, this business is still going, but then there's that balance of like, okay, but I'm also not like actively, asking for more business. And that's recently I started an Instagram account for my Sweet Francis, like my bridal sewing business. And I'm like, I need to have something just because when people come to my Instagram, it's mostly now podcast stuff and like membership stuff. And it's for seamstresses. So it's like the content isn't for my brides. And then when I started the Sweet Francis, it's like, even for a while, I'm like, I don't even really want to put much time into this because, and what I'm saying when I say this, but I'm already like pretty booked. And so it's not my intention isn't to find clients with my social media. The intention is to just kind of establish my brand out there. People will know what they're going to get if they click on a picture or look at my captions or look at my quotes or whatever. So I totally get that balance of like, but then other people are like on the other side where they're like, I just started my social media. I'm trying to get my presence out there. I'm building up my clientele, so you have like different purposes with your social media, and it doesn't all work the same for everybody. Like we have different goals, you know what I'm saying? So after you had, because this whole conversation is just so good, because like I mentioned before, I think some of our audience members are thinking, why would I need a VA? And then they're listening and they're like, oh, these are all the reasons why, but because of the nature of what we do, and like we touched on starting a business, you need some tenacity to start the business and creativity. And like, we're really great at like DIY stuff and doing everything ourselves. So the thoughts of hiring somebody else to do something that we probably could figure out. I mean, it might take us like 4 days, but we would save the money and then we would figure it out, there are a lot of people in that boat, because I know I was there for a long time, and it sounds like you were there for a while too. Like, is it really worth it? So how have you seen your brand elevated since hiring out for these tasks?
So like immensely. My whole brand, my confidence in myself has changed so much since I've put this brand of mine. And like, it's weird to call it a brand because it's just myself. I'm not advertising for like, some huge Coca-Cola or so. Like they have a branding that's very different. All my stuff is some headshots and some color coordination and a logo that looks nice, but it makes everything so much easier for me to post online. You do the headshots and you're like, okay, I've got, months worth of content, and I can write whatever I want under this picture. Whatever I feel like I need to convey to my clients, I can write underneath this picture. And it makes picking stock images easier because you can buy the color that you're using and things like that. And everything then looks more put together. But I found the difference in once I put my website out there and I put pricing and I did the automation, the number of clients I have now that come and they're like, it was so easy to find all of your information online. It was so easy to book with you, to know exactly what I was going to get, to come to me already having confidence because I have these systems in place.
Yeah.
That's what makes it feel worth it. And I will say that I get a lot of my business. I don't want to say all of it. I don't even know how much, maybe 75% of my business comes from one dress shop, and it's about 45 minutes drive away from me. And they hand people the sheet and they say, these are the seamstresses we recommend, within 100-kilometer radius, and go ahead and pick one. And our clients, generally speaking, the age that they're in, they're on social media. So if they can find people on social media and they can look at their page and they get a feel for how this person works, they're more likely to book with that person, even if it's just based on their Instagram and the feeling that gives them. Than they are to say, if, like we said, when there's one shop that just has your cell phone number and that's it, like you have no visual examples of this person's work. And like my Instagram is really not like a portfolio. Like there are some bridal seamstresses that their whole Instagram is like the before and afters, or this is how we do things, or look how cool this is. And I do post some of that stuff, but really the majority of it is not that. It's just to give my clients a feeling and to know what they can expect. Yes. So I feel like that's really narrowed down the type of clients that I'm getting are people that can read through my captions and get a feeling for how I work and how I act. Yes. Like I am fully out there. Like if you read my webpage, that's how I speak. Like, if that speaks to you as a client, then great, we're a perfect match. But if you go on there and you're like, oh, this person's too prissy for me. Like I really want like a, more rough and tumble, I'm going to get a deal kind of seamstress, then like you can go on my website and realize that's not the type of seamstress I am. And, maybe you continue your search.
Yeah. I love how you kept saying people can visit your social media and they know the feeling they'd get working with you. And that is marketing in a nutshell. Like that's perfect, and we each kind of have our own systems, or what's the word I'm looking for? What is the word I'm looking for? Like marketing, not plans. This will be an edit, by the way. What is that word? Strategy. Okay. I'll start the sentence again. Okay. Yeah. We each have our own like marketing strategy, and you see that in different social media accounts from different seamstresses of like how they want to attract clients or what they want to. It's really like, what about them did they want to showcase? You know what I mean? Like, what about their business are they most proud of? And so that's, I think, what we see on people's feeds. And I heard this recently, actually, at our retreat. We were talking about social media and how brides start their alterations journey like well before they even get engaged. And oftentimes it does start with like investigating or like checking out social media of, you know, the vendors that they're going to dream of working with whenever they get the ring on their finger, you know? So sometimes it starts even before they get that seamstress list, but keeping that in mind too, that's often where these young 20 somethings are going.
Yeah.
When they get your name on that list, like, oh, okay, let me check out my options here.
Yeah. I mean, I do the same thing. It's if I was going to hire, if I was looking for a hairdresser, like that would be the first place I would go. Like, I want to see some of your work. I want to peek inside your studio a little bit. Like, and I want to see as much of that online as I can before I commit my time to going to see you in person. Even if I'm not going to see you for an appointment, maybe I'm just going to stroll in and see if I can book an appointment kind of thing.
Yeah.
So same kind of thing. Like, that's where I would go to look for stuff.
Oh, totally. So it's like, can't expect anything else from our potential clients because like we all act the same way. So what would you, like a final piece of advice, because this was really packed full. I'm really excited to get this episode out there. But what final piece of advice would you give to a listener who's considering hiring out? Maybe they're on the fence with either the control thing or the money thing. I feel like the money thing is probably a big deal. Like, I'm going to give what I have to pay somebody else for something. Like, I'm the sole owner here. So how would you advise them to work through that with pros and cons or?
So have you ever seen something on Pinterest and you're like, I could totally make that. That's not that hard. I can make it. And then you go to the store and you get all the materials and then you come home. So at this point, you're in this for hours already and you got to figure it out. You got to think all your way through it. And then you actually start assembling stuff. So you're in for more hours and then you run out of hot glue. So you got to go back to the store and then you get it done. And it's like, it's pretty good. So if I would have just spent the money at the store, if I would have just spent the money, like if I go into the store and just have bought this finish, would I have been any further ahead? Like, or maybe they really like that they made it themselves. Like, I totally do this all the time. Maybe they really like that they made it themselves, or maybe they finished it and they're like, man, I should have just bought it when I saw it because that was great. Then it was finished. I didn't have to commit this many hours. And so I feel like that's the same feeling. When you're at this stage of your business, it's like, this is the feeling. I could do all this stuff myself. Absolutely. Is it going to be A+ work? Like, probably not. Right. Somebody else could absolutely do this better than me. And so I think that's when it's time to kind of take that leap, is knowing where your strengths are, knowing where you could be doing better, and valuing your time. If I can offload something and that means that I can spend more time with my kids, great. If I can offload something, it means it can spend more time sitting on the couch instead of doing laptop work, because I don't like the computer part of this job. And I also will add to that, there's a learning curve to it. It's going to take some time. Like, you can go out and hire a VA tomorrow. It's going to be 3 months before you're more hands off. Like, that person has to learn. You have to learn how you work together, and respecting each other's boundaries and things like that. So there's 2 parts to that answer, I guess. One is somebody else might be able to do this better, and that's okay. It's okay to admit that to yourself. And 2 is, what is the value of your time? Like, where can you apply yourself better? What could you be doing instead of this? And that's when you can find time to hire stuff out.
Yeah.
And I think
you gave a great example of like, it didn't all happen at once. So it was what you could afford. And then also like what you needed in the moment with the automated systems. And then the next step was like, okay, I can afford somebody and it's worth it to have somebody answer my emails. And then the social media marketing, it's like, or the social media management, everything didn't all come at once. So you can like dip your toe in and then like see how this feels and release the things like, what is it, sequentially? Yeah.
Yeah, like priorities. And it's okay to admit if something's not working. Like I said, I've had 3 different people that I've tried to hire to do my social media, and it's okay to say that it's not working. Or maybe it worked the first bit and then, maybe it kind of fell off after that. Yes. So I would say if anybody's looking at hiring stuff, just be careful with your contracts for how long you're hiring these people for, and making sure that you're comfortable spending that much for that long, but knowing that the first bit of it is going to be learning time. It doesn't just like, there's no one-stop shop for somebody that's going to take over, part of your business.
Yeah, that's fair. And it's good to know that before you get into it, like with your eyes open, that it's not like, oh, great, I'm delegating and now it's all theirs, not mine. It's like, there's that kind of learning process along the way. So, well, I'm excited to hear how people will use this and maybe make the decision to hire out or just delegate a couple jobs, a couple at a time. So thank you so much for sharing, because I know I've been a big fan and I'm like, oh my goodness, everything does look so elevated, like your website, your social media. I'm like, oh, I love it. So thanks for sharing the secrets.
Thank you so much for having me. This is awesome.
So where can people find you or learn more about you or check out your pretty feed?
You can check out my pretty feed. I'm on Instagram at Bree Mcqueen Bridal, same on Facebook at Bree Mcqueen Bridal. And then my website is just www.breemcqueen.com.
Oh,
keep it simple peasy. All the way across the board.
Yeah. Streamlined. Okay, well, we'll have those in our show notes. Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Great. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it so much and can't wait to get this information out.